All right. So very excited to see everyone as they're coming in. We'll just give it a couple seconds here. Leo, you can put the mute back on. Oh, there we go. I can hit mute now. There we go. There we are. Okay, good. So glad to see everyone here. So again, the plan will be that we'll stay on mute for everyone. We have a few that we're going to bring in to chat from time to time, and we're going to invite a lot of chat box participation. So certainly throw down questions, resources, and we'll be trying to respond as we go forward. It's not going to be a traditional lecture at you. We're going to do some talking points, and we've got some of our board members and some other individuals from our communities that we're asked to weigh in and talk and have a conversation on this. And then we want to get your ideas in here as well. So let's make it as much of a dynamic conversation as we can. Okay. So I think with that, there we go. Nice housekeeping. I think we're ready, Ava, to turn it over to you. I think you're on mute.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. We are really enthusiastic about releasing our next annual United States Condition for Career Readiness report. And we are excited, especially to be joined by the chair of our board, Dr. Annette Parker. And we have a special thanks to the secretary of our board, and one who has made a lot of this possible from the very beginning, Jean Eddy, who is the president and CEO of American Student Assistance. And I also have a special announcement to make before we get into the report, that to mark the release of our second annual report, the CCD founder and chair emeritus, Leo Reddy, is providing a 10-year annual $10,000 prize to be awarded to the educational institutions demonstrating excellent and visionary leadership in addressing the condition of career readiness in the United States. Details will be announced soon with the release of our promotional video featuring Leo Reddy himself. So I wanted to pause for a moment to recognize our founder, Leo Reddy. Can you please wave at the viewing audience, Leo?
All right. So exciting, Leo. So exciting.
So Scott, I want to transition by thanking you for this research to advance the Coalition for Career Development Center's mission.
All right. Well, thank you. This is my pleasure. It's been, as those of us behind the scenes know, it has been a long journey getting this one going, but we have a phenomenal team at Concepts Communications that's been working with us to get this to a nice looking and beautiful drafted report. And so it has been a huge team effort. And of course, the head of that team has been Ava, who's been really steadfast in really getting this work out. So it's been an exciting opportunity. So the plan for today, right now, I'm gonna go through some slides. We're gonna start with launching Future Ready Youth. We're gonna hit some of the high points, and then Jean Eddy and I are gonna have a conversation about some of the components to go into that. And we also have someone from our Massachusetts Business Alliance for Education to respond as well. So we're gonna do just kind of some of the touch points of the data, and then try to get some conversation. And as you're listening to things and there's questions or there's comments, I know you've all got comments and you've got resources that may be things we need to know about. Let's use that chat and let's keep adding to the chat box as we go forward. So this will be great. Okay, Chong, you wanna? So one of the things that we're looking at here at the very beginning is, how are we preparing youth to launch out of high school, right? And what are the conditions that we need? And we know from our American School Counseling Association, and I think we have Jill Cook, hopefully who's on our call. I know she was registered from president of the ASCA. We got to have enough school counselors in our schools, and we're doing pretty well in high school. You see a 234-to-1 ratio, which is really exciting. We are not doing well in middle and elementary schools. This is a really staggering difference to see where we're putting our school counselors. And I think what COVID showed us is that we have a lot of mental health residual issues and challenges. And if we don't have those school counselors in these elementary, middle schools, not only are we losing the opportunity for some of that future readiness and career readiness issues, we're also losing out on that emotional well-being that we need to be providing as well. So this is kind of a big point that as a country, we really got to be thinking about this. It is nice that at the high schools, we're doing pretty well. You know, we're below that 250 to 1 ratio. But here we go. And I see we already have a question, college counselors, guidance counselors. So we're using school counselors as the key theme. And it's however the state reported that. So they could be college oriented, but for the most part, they would be identified as a school counselor, whether they're providing college or a college career or the mental health and supports. Next slide. And then there's some variation. So our top 10 states, for example, when it comes to our elementary middle schools, it's down to 485 to 1, which is still not great. But the bottom 10 states, it's 1,000 to 1, over 1,000 to 1 ratio. So I don't know where the school counselors are, but they're not anywhere near our elementary middle schools in some of our states. At the high school level, we're getting down below 200, which is great. And we kind of need that, especially as we're in high risk communities where we know we need more school counselors. Is also we need school counselors to be ready to write those special letters that go off to college. We know they're becoming heavily weighted now that many of the colleges are not needing to have a test score from ACT or SAT. So we got to have more school counselors even in the high school. So we're starting to see that in some of our states. Next one. So now here's where we start to get into some question marks. We're doing pretty well graduating students from high school, right? Not so well on the FAFSA form completion. And I know, you know, it's a crisis this year for multiple reasons, but it's also been a downward trend. That's a major issue that if you don't get the FAFSA form in, so many of our students are not going to be eligible or able to afford or to get into the college. The AP course thing, 60% is really exciting to see. That's a sign of the percentage of students that are thinking about post-secondary education. And when we say post-secondary, we actually mean 2-year or 4-year. But we'll also talk about post-school pathways because we also want to talk about military as well as going into work or finding some kind of apprenticeship or training program. So we want to open up the definition of that. But for this presentation and given the national data we're working with, it's really focused on if you're going to a 2-year or 4-year college. So then this is the interesting point. 60% after they graduate from high school are entering either a 2-year or 4-year degree, which means that we've already lost 40% of our 9th graders, right? After they've transitioned out. This is kind of a scary situation because if we're already losing 40%, then in the next slide, you're going to see the percentage who entered that actually finished. We're getting down to almost like maybe 25 to 35% of that 9th grade group. This is a very small percentage are actually getting through either a 2-year or a 4-year degree program. And I'm not sure we're quite clear of just about how much of a challenge that is. But if you want to go to the next one, we'll start taking a look at that. Oh, in this case, let's look at the top 10 states. So those states that we ranked at the top, we're providing 9% more of them were getting into that, getting an AP course score of 3 or higher. 21% were getting higher FAFSA form completion. 10% more were going to college, so it went from 60 to 70%. This is good stuff. These are good numbers saying that there is some discrepancies across our states. And so some states are having a better outcomes in relation to this. Next one. Okay, so let's pause there then. So Jean, I want to chat with you if you could come off mute and join us up here. And maybe we could put a, if we can find you here. Oh, there we go. Okay. But I'm going to pin you, Jean. So we've got you right there.
Okay.
And I'll add a pin for myself too. We'll talk for a second. So what I love about American Student Assistance, by the way, for everyone, has been a champion for this report. And if it wasn't for Jean, it wasn't for Julie Lamers, we wouldn't be here today. And so they have been not only steadfast in supporting us, they're out doing the work. And I've always told Jean that she needs that doctorate. She needs just the honorary doctorate because she talks about this better than most of the researchers I work with in terms of the detail of the data and the impact and really the levers for creating change. So I was thinking it would be awesome, Jean, for you to talk about. I mean, you don't want to start at the high school. if we don't if we don't enter high school ready to go, right, we're losing them. And that's what we just showed. Only 60% are moving into 2 or 4 years. So that means we already lost them, even starting from the ninth grade. So can you tell us a little bit about what you are all doing at the middle school? Because it's tremendous. And I think everybody needs to hear about what ASA is doing in this space.
Sure. So, we discovered quite a bit ago that the best time to connect with kids as far as having them learn about this themselves and what they're really good at is in middle school. And why it's important in middle school is because if you think about it, kids have to make big choices, even as far as the courses they take in high school. And so to really start to introduce careers and to have that merge with talents and interests, things that you really love to do is critical. What I was taken back by in looking at the number of kids who go on to some kind of post-secondary, what's even more interesting to me is how many of those kids actually finish whichever post-secondary path they may want to
Right.
start going down the road. And I will tell you that those numbers, particularly in some specific groups, are very, very low. And I think that has everything to do with the fact, and research will show, that there's a disengagement going on. High school is really too late. So if kids don't see the relevance of what they're learning and how that connects to those things that I talked about before, interests, passions, and potential career pathways, they are going to be disengaged and not willing to take the next steps in the pathway after high school.
And so I want to let me just go into that a little bit, but then I also want to ask you if you want to share a couple of the things that you've been putting out there intervention wise. But I think not only is that a major issue, but we know that within the individualized or the personalized career and academic plan process that many states are using and they're getting into the middle school, we want them to have a clear plan for how they can use that high school experience, right? You were just talking about the relevance. I know we have all this pathways. There's career and technical education pathways. There's early college. If youth start leaving the eighth grade, do not understand that these are very important for them to be looking at down the road. By the time they figure it out, they're in the 10th, 11th grade, and it's too late. So there really is an opportunity for us to help them really understand the relevance and meaning, as you said, about this. And it does mean that they need to be exploring. Our families need to be right there with them as well as they're exploring these opportunities. But what's one or two of the really cool things that ASA is sponsoring right now to really jumpstart that middle school student and family to really think about their future?
Well, I think the first thing that we started doing was we started working with individual schools. And I would have to say big kudos to teachers out there who are teaching middle school and superintendents who are very engaged in this process as well. But we've worked with schools to actually introduce career exploration in 7th and 8th grade. And what we find, and we've had cohorts of kids now moving through this process, more and more of those students are figuring out courses they need to take in high school so that they will be able to have that rich future after they graduate. The other thing we do a lot of work with students directly with our digital programs. We have platforms that I must say are fun, engaging, but also allow kids to, through fun and engagement, figure out what it is they really love to do and what their interests are. Then we show them a whole world of possibilities as far as pathways they could take. Not picking a job, but rather the things that might comprise the job, whether it's in the sciences or in healthcare or in electronics. But those kinds of things that allow a young person to go out and then test and try them. We also give kids opportunities to test and try. We can do digital internships. We've done day in the life of someone. Kids have followed other kids in their quest for finding things out. We right now are working with about 15 million kids that are either in middle school or high school, and it's across the country. And I have to keep going back to the one word I started with. It has to be fun so that kids feel as though it's a supplement to what they're doing and not replacing what they're doing in school.
That's right. And I think at the end of the day, what we're building are skills. The ability to explore who I am, the ability to recognize there are places in this world where those skills are relevant and meaningful. It's not about a choice. It's not about a decision. It's about learning how to navigate, as you said, and really taking advantage of the various learning opportunities that are out there in our communities. So what I'd like to do now, Gene, is I'm going to switch it over and talk now with one more person here. Jim, are you able to come off, Michalowski?
Yes, I am. Hi, Scott.
All right. So excited to have a chance to talk with you.
Yeah.
So tell us a little about first, tell us about the work you do, right? What you're about in terms of things. And then I want to talk with you about your reactions as we start seeing some of these data points. I know your organization has been really big in trying to keep the pressure on improving our education system. So first, let's start with that, just kind of who you are and kind of what your organization does, and then let's put it in context with the data you're seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for the opportunity to chat with folks. My name is James Michalowski. I'm the Director of Policy at the Massachusetts Business Alliance for Education. We are a nonprofit based in the Boston area, but we do work across the state of Massachusetts. And we have a number of businesses who are members and affiliates of our organization. And so we really act as the voice of business leaders in different education policy discussions across the state. So this work and this conversation is very much focused on kind of the work that we do and the things that our partners care a lot about. And I've seen some comments in the chat about the importance of thinking about this from a talent pipeline perspective, which is one of the lenses we use, but we also come at it from an equity perspective. Massachusetts has some very high aggregate statistics, but when you break things down, there really are very troubling, persistent equity gaps across the state. So as we think about things like career development, we also have that in the back of our mind of how are we ensuring that these opportunities are available to students and communities across the state.
Right.
We did a report on the importance of centering equity in career pathway design. And we interviewed a bunch of leaders of color from across the state, and we heard things like, in some communities, they don't even know that there is a life sciences sector in Massachusetts, much less that it is a world leader and has all these terrific career opportunities. So we really need to think about making sure that some of this work is scaled in ways that are available for all students across the Commonwealth.
And the way you operate is you're out there trying to support new policies to really build this out, right? And I'm just curious to see some of the things that you've got on the table that relate to this period, right? How are we helping graduate youth that are ready, to launch into that post-school transition?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of the things that have been touched on so far are very relevant for a lot of this work in terms of making sure students are ready for life after high school, whatever that might mean for them, whether it's directly getting an entry-level STEM job or getting an industry recognized credential that allows them to enter a certain field, or whether it's pursuing a higher education degree. And I think the individualized planning tool and process that has come up a couple times is we see as really central to this whole thing. Here in Massachusetts, we call it MyCap. And the state provides some training for schools to implement it, but it really hasn't been rolled out across the state in the way that we think it needs to be. Not just the platform, but also kind of the whole school buy-in of making career guidance something that all adults in a building can play an important role in. We hear a lot of momentum around this MyCap planning tool in the high school space, but kind of the next frontier for us and our advocacy is about how do we reach further down into middle schools and start some of this opportunity. And also, crucially, one thing we talk about with some of the folks we're working with is how do we build partnerships between middle schools and high schools so that as a student transitions from one school to the next, it's a seamless process and they're able to continue making sure that they're making progress towards their personal goals. When a student enters high school here in Massachusetts, they have choices. Do they enroll in an early college program, which might have a particular career bend? Do they enroll in a kind of high dosage CTE program, which we call Chapter 74, which are very industry specific kind of hands-on training programs? And so we want students to have as much information to make informed choices as much as possible, and also to think about their own kind of not just career identity, but self-identity. You know, how are they making sense of who they are and who they want to be in this world, and how does that happen on a parallel track to kind of priming them to think about what sort of career options might make sense for them down the road. So MyCap access is big for us. With there's a budget amendment right now. We're in the kind of budget process here in Massachusetts. We have a budget amendment that would require schools to develop a plan to universalize access to MyCap by 2026, I believe, if I'm recalling correctly. I don't have it in front of me, but that's a big one for us, and we're also just kind of working with partners on the ground to learn more about how to help scale this in an equitable way.
That's awesome. And you know what's happening in Massachusetts right now is the middle schools are coming in. They're actually can join into the funding stream, and also elementary is coming in to be coming on, turning the corner as well, which is exciting.
Okay.
And this is following the national trends that once the high schools got in, it really became clear, as Jean, you were just saying, if we don't get them started in middle school, we're losing a tremendous leverage point, right? But then we keep going down, right? If they don't know by the end of the fourth grade, if they want to go into a STEM career, if they don't know by the fourth grade how they're doing in math, that's going to become a real risk point, right? So they keep coming down into the areas. So, and we just had last week, was it last week, Ava? We had PBS Kids where we were featuring them, talking about how 2 weeks ago, talking about how we really need to build that identity from the very beginning, so that the family and the child see themselves in different career opportunities all the way through. But I'm appreciative of all the work you're all doing at MBAE to really champion this work. And it's exciting to see kind of a whole community effort to get into this space. So thank you so much. Well, why don't we move on into the next area? Let's see here. Excellent. So now we're going to talk about that transition to adulthood. We're talking here now about that as they're moving into the college. How are we doing? Let's take a look at that, and then we'll talk about what happens during young adults during that after they're through with their college, where are they and what are they looking like, and really we'll start focusing on opportunities in that space as well. Why don't we hit the next slide here? So we got some issues with our 2-year degree completion rates, by the way, as a country. It's not good. Now, there's lots of reasons for that, and I don't want to say it's all about the school, but 36% is pretty low. You know, we'd like to see a little larger percentage of that. We'd love to see it, you know, obviously 100%, but we need to study that more. Technical education programming. I know that the CHIPS funding that's coming in is really focusing on technicians, is where 60% of the jobs are going to be, and that's going to actually be something that is going to be needing a 2-year degree to be able to enter. So we've got to figure this out in some way. If you're attending full-time, obviously 75%, which is great, but we need to find ways to support those part-time students. Is that childcare? You know, what are the issues? Is it paid internships that pay enough for me to both work and go to school? But then this other piece, and I think, Jean, you were alluding to this earlier, right? What happened? How many are finishing? If only 60% are entering, and of that 60% are finishing, you start to see this diminishing return. And as a parent, it's my property values that's the main investment here, right? Well as in the 2-year college, and we're not in our public colleges, we're not seeing the payoff right now. And that's a significant issue. And then I think, Jim, as you were describing or alluding to, there's an equity issue. We know that with some groups, it's abysmal. It's just absolutely abysmal how few are getting through the pipeline. What's interesting is we're talking, thank you, John, we're talking about this in the state of Massachusetts where we're excited about what we're doing, but we are so far behind where it needs to be. And so we want to stand up as a state and say we can do better. And nationally, you'll see in this report, we all need to do better. So it's not this isn't about when you start to see, we're going to show you your state map and you can go look at your own data in a few minutes. But it's not about calling out a particular state. We all have work to do in this space, okay? So when we compare the top 10 states, we get a little bit more percentage on the part-time student performance. We get a little bit more on the 2-year program, only 4% more on that 4-year degree program. So when you compare the top and bottom states, you know what, we've got a lot of work to do across all of them. So we really need to be thinking about that. Next slide. So now this is an area that we've got some people on. I'm excited to have chat about this. In a moment, I'm going to have our board chair, Annette Parker, go back to that 2-year college piece and some of the innovative work that she's involved in that space. But we have someone who's going to talk about the opportunity youth. So we call it opportunity youth internationally. We call it NEET, not in education, not employed or in education. Or in training. So the NEET, this opportunity youth, these are the ones that they're not doing anything. They're not in school, they're not in work, completely disconnected. I like the disconnected frame myself. 12%, that's really high. So these are individuals that are at a very high risk category. Or less of them are completing high school. Let's go down to the next one and look at the disaggregated look at who these individuals are. A lot of them are individuals with disabilities. We need to be looking at this. This is a significant issue. How are we supporting youth and young adults with disabilities to transition effectively into the world of work? This has been a problem nationally forever. To double down on making this happen. We also have a higher percentage of them that are African-American, Black students that are also. For the most part, the rest of them, not a lot of differences going on in terms of, nothing that I would point out. A couple of percentages here or there. But those were the two that came up the biggest with young adults with disabilities. Ridiculously high representation in this group. So this is an all hands on deck situation. We need our health and human services involved. We need our mental health services. We need everyone, voc rehab, career development, all of it. In Scotland, they took all that data from all those different groups, health and human services, education systems, all of it. And when that young adult fell off, they either got an illness, they stopped working, they stepped out of school, they had a career counselor at the door within a week to talk with them. So there is something we need to do for our own well-being as a nation, but also taking a look at this state by state to figure out how we can monitor and really understand who they are and try to put in some interventions right away before it gets too late. So then this is the other part of the young adult that we're really concerned about, which is, what is that future outlook, right? If we're telling youth, you need to go to school, you need to go to college, and then you're going to have a bright future. Well, when you look at the median wage earnings, it's not looking so great when you get out of college. 19 to 27-year-olds averaging less than $13 an hour. That seems a little problematic. And then when you take a look at the living wage, which our MIT living wage calculator, really appreciate the work they've done in this space. They want at least a $25 an hour to be able to get to that living point. I'm not saying you're going to graduate from college and start making $25 an hour. We would all like that, but we want to be moving towards that, right? We want to be moving up in that, and we've only got a third of our nation's students that are in this age group that are making that $25 an hour. So that's hard to be thinking about. Oh, I've got a great future. I can buy a home. I can have a family. If I'm not even making the wage earnings that I need to be able to do that, right? And even when you look at state variations, it's not significant in the sense that you're getting about $3 more an hour, so it's up to 15, about 13% more that are making the living wage. But we do need to take a look at this. And I think Jean, you would agree with this as well. What's the pathway, right? What's the pathway to social mobility? And that's the difference. It's not about your decision of, oh, I'm going to do this. It's I'm starting here, and then I'm going to continue developing along a pathway that's going to lead toward those wages that I need in order to be able to have the kind of life I want to have, right? That's a big change, because we're not just relying on getting the job and hoping that job helps me. I, as the individual, need to be entering with an understanding of how all of this works. We, as a community, need to put those pathways in place, and that's the part we don't have. It's starting to happen. We've got a few organizations that are putting together some nice little pathway charts and things that we need, but we need a lot more of them so that wherever you start in this world, you want to start as a baker technician. How do I go from there into biotechnology? It's the same stuff, same chemistry that you're learning in baking that's going to be used in biotech. How do we help you see that they can transition into those spaces and the education pathways to get there? So we have a lot of work to do in redesigning what we mean by becoming a young adult. it's a pathway towards social mobility is the framing on that. And I think we're going to chat for a minute. Is that right? All right. So let me, I'm going to unpin you, Jim, if I can. Let me do that. And then I want to go and Annette, are you here somewhere?
I am.
Thank you. And I'm going to put the pin on you now. This is so fun. I like this pinning thing. We just kind of move it, just you and I, just having a chat. So you're kind of a rock star, Dr. Parker.
Maybe.
Maybe? Oh my God. So I'm always amazed the more I learn about you and the things you've done. And I hope we can get a little bit in there. But President, South Central College in Minnesota. No, we should say Minnesota.
Yes.
But anyway, you've had an amazing journey, and you are all about the 2-year college and the power it can bring, especially when it comes to manufacturing
Yes.
and the whole industry stuff. So I want you to talk. I mean, how do we get that 36% rate up? What are you doing in your, because you're doing a whole bunch of stuff, wrap around, you've got it all going. Just take it away. Tell us what we need to do.
First off, I want to give a shout out to Jean because she hit it right on the head about middle school. And I'm going to talk about my example. When I was in middle school and maybe even in elementary school, I'm getting a lot of trouble for going in my brother's room and getting his Cub Scout book and playing around with it. And so I really enjoyed that stuff, electronics and putting things together. I had a high aptitude for spatial relations. I had a high aptitude for mechanical applications, which kind of led me into manufacturing. And I excelled there, and then determined that I wanted to go back to school and help young people figure out their careers, right? And mostly focusing on career and technical education. And so, I think that, all students need to be career ready, regardless of their background, and understand the skills and the opportunities that they want to pursue for a desired career and how they achieve that potential. And so for me, as I started and I understood that I wanted to be in manufacturing, I wanted to do design. If my reading was applied, then I would accelerate at it. If they could apply the math, I became fluent in math. And I built strong writing skills and communication skills. And so then you take those things and you begin to think about critical thinking. How do I solve problems in my sector? How do I research problems to come to conclusions? Those are all skills that our students need to be successful in community college. And then I'm going to add one that we're seeing all the time in our young students that come straight from high school, and that is technology skills. Believe it or not, they're not familiar with a computer keyboard. They're familiar with their cell phone, whether it's a Droid or an Apple, but they don't know how to work with the computer technology and some of the software that comes along with that. And so I really believe that we need to make sure that they have all of those skills, but also understand what they're good at. In high school, in middle school, I understood I was good at softball. And I could excel at that. I'm determining what I do well and what I don't. What I also want to talk about that's a big deal in community colleges is really how do we close equity gaps? And that's when you look at the social economic status of some of our students, English proficiency. I have a lot of new American students, the wealth of our community, having faculty and staff that look like them, are all contribute and perpetuate lower educational aspirations. And so we really need to make sure that our schools, our faculty, they see themselves in our faculty and staff, that the community is really getting them involved in civic engagement, work-based learning, apprenticeship, internship, however that work-based learning experience it happens. But we make sure at South Central College that all students get that experience. They do civic engagement. We make sure they're registered to vote, and that they're engaged in really understanding the politics around them and what is that impact on them and their lives. But you know, I want to talk a little bit about the socioeconomic status.
Please, thank you. Yeah.
At South Central College, for example, we became in 2018 a hunger-free campus. And what we realized is that a big chunk of our students were hungry. And many of our students, the average age is 26. And so they have kids in the school system that are just as hungry as they are. And so how do we allow them without shame to be able to order groceries from South Central College, have a confidential way of picking up that food, and have access to nutrition, okay? And then how do we deal with emergencies? I can have a student drop out of a community college because of $50, maybe even $10. So how do you make sure that they have access to those resources? And so we worked with our foundation to create what we call a lifesaver grant. And within 24 hours, we'll fund a student to get a battery for their car that might keep them out of school, a tire for their bicycle, okay, an abscessed tooth. So how do you cover things like that to keep them engaged, keep them in school? Okay.
So what you're talking about is a very vulnerable population.
It's very vulnerable. And the other thing that's vulnerable, Scott, is mental health. So what we did also was we hired 2 social workers. So I have 2 campuses. I have a social worker on each campus that works with the community to all the community resources such as United Way and all the other organizations to make sure that students have all of the wraparound services they need, and even working with some that might provide medication if there's a psychological issue going on. So those are the things that hurt community college students. And then secondly, you talked about them being part-time. Let's talk a bit about part-time students in the community college. Part-time student in community college generally is working. They might have kids. In all probability, they have kids. And so they can only go part-time. So it'll take 4 years to complete a 2-year degree. Okay, so a lot of times it'll take much longer than 4 years even to complete that degree, if ever. And if some kind of crises from their socioeconomic status gets in the way, that's when they drop out.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Yep. And then childcare.
Yes, and childcare is huge. And you know, even as a community, our chamber now is helping with to get more childcare providers so that not only can our students go to school, but also women can go to work. And so that's been a huge impact on just having the workforce that we need. And I think that's a national problem. It's everywhere.
Yeah, it is. And then one more thing that I want you to hit on, because I know it's not something else that you feel passionate about and have been trying to figure out strategies. Rural versus urban.
Yes. You know, let me just say that my campus is one I would call very rural, and the other I would say is a small metropolitan statistical area. So 80,000, 100,000 people, but still small town. What's really cool about those spaces is everybody's in it together. What I'm seeing in these towns is they want to remain vibrant, and they know it's going to require an educated, trained, civically engaged workforce. And so they build partnership and you're part of the community. And so we're all working together, whether it's the chamber, all of the employers, the schools, etc. What we've been able to do is to really, with working with our chamber president, we've created a cradle to career program, so that we're looking at kids from before they go to daycare, right?
Yeah.
We're looking at how are we going to make sure our kids are successful in our communities. And so it's been a great opportunity to really look at solving problems like that, and in communities that are changing so quickly, demographically.
hmm And then while I have you, I just want to just show off a little bit. Skills USA.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just the idea of how transformative having those opportunities for our youth that have not worked in construction, not worked on major, you know, robotics and all these different areas, to really do something in a national level. And I know you've been a huge proponent. I know you've won many awards, but just maybe a little bit of just a little shout out to what a great opportunity that can be for helping youth really find some relevance and meaning.
Yes, let me just tell you, I have 3 national medals. I will brag about that.
Thank
And
you. Yes, it's awesome.
yeah, and the coolest thing that there's 2 cool things. First of all, if you're worried about our country and you say, are these kids patriotic? Are they our future? Go to the Skills USA conference and you will have a whole different vision of our future. Our kids are bright, and there's challenges in the research that you've shared, but there are some really exceptional
hmm
students every year that come out of Skills USA. But the first thing that I want to share, one of the things that's really impacted me as a young student at Skills USA, I was at the national conference. And of course, you have to wear the red Skills USA blazer. And we've got our medals on because we just won. And there's this young mom, and she's got like a 5-year-old that says, "Look, mom, there's a champion." And so to that point, how do we really
hmm
instill that some of these careers are very valuable? They can give you a livable wage.
hmm
And how do we get kids to understand and get excited about it? So it was so exciting to hear this 5-year-old say, "Mom, look, there's a champion."
That's so awesome. And congratulations again for all of that. And thank you so much for all of the work you do in that space. I know you've
Thank
been a
you.
role model and a coach and just supporting youth all the way through as well. So it's really fantastic. Well,
Scott,
thank
if
you
I
so
could
much.
share
Yeah,
one more
yeah.
thing.
Please, yeah.
We had our commencement on Friday.
Mhm,
And I want to talk about a couple things that are really helpful here, is to really, how do you partner with K-12 and higher ed, and not kind of blame each other, but look for solutions together. And I kind of alluded to that. And that's what we're doing with our chamber and with our high school, with our school districts, to really make sure that the kids are career ready when they get to the community college,
mhm,
because developmental education in the community college is a black
mhm.
hole. They're never coming
Totally.
out of it.
No,
So
no.
you have to do things to make sure they're ready for college when they get there, with some of the skills that I alluded to earlier. So we have created early college model. This modeled off of the P-TECH. We do a lot of post-secondary education options where high school kids are getting college credit before they leave high school. And we don't care if it's the high school instructors that's
Mhm,
delivering some of the courses or the college instructors. Ultimately, it doesn't matter who gets the funds and the resources, is building better communities.
mhm.
And you really have to go into that with that in mind. And let me just say, because of that, I had 44 high school kids graduate last Thursday, and they don't graduate high school until next month.
See, that's fantastic. That is so fantastic. I know we had a story here that I've talked a little bit about from time to time where the same thing happened. Student went through college graduation the week before high school graduation. They got their degree in cosmetology, which honestly was not my favorite when I saw that. But then the next sentence told me to shut up very quickly, because it said in the next sentence, and now she'll be entering Northeastern in engineering.
Yes,
It's like, what are we talking about? The 2-year college, that early college gives a sense of confidence. It gives a sense that I can, and
right,
it's about building an aspiration for what I can become. It's phenomenal.
right. And let me just say that mines were in pathways,
Mhm.
2+2s with the local university here.
Yeah.
So Associates of Art pathways, Associate of
Mhm.
Business pathway, Associate of Psychology pathway, okay?
And
But
it rolls right
also,
up.
yes,
Mhm.
and even 2 years in mechatronics. I know Leo
Mhm.
will get that one, right?
Mhm.
Instrumental, so important for manufacturing and for the chips industry.
Yep.
Um, but really giving those kids a head start. So I have a local doctor here that puts all his kids through our post-secondary education option. And he tells them if you finish, they graduate college at 18 the community college. And he tells them if they graduate the university at 20, that he'll give them all of the money that it would have cost him the first 2 years.
Wow. That's amazing. That is so awesome. Well, Annette, it's so exciting to be able to talk with you about all this stuff. You're just such an incredible role model. And I certainly look up to you. I look up to Jean to have such powerful women that are leading this country around these issues. It's amazing. And it's so exciting. I think what we're seeing, and I'm seeing a little bit in the chat, but everyone's in agreement that it can't just be about school. We got to find things out of school that really lift up their sense of purpose, their sense of competence, the sense of aspirations for what they can become. And then it comes right back in to the relevance that they see, as Jean was saying, then they see the relevance as they go into education. What I love is that the 2-year college can really be that transformation in our community. You're
Yes,
tying together the middle school, the high school, the 4-year. You're the point that really brings all of this together. And so just so excited to hear someone who's
yes.
doing it.
And don't forget the employers.
And our employers have to be there all the time, right? We need those paid internships,
Yes,
and we need to connect you to those caring, encouraging mentors that are really going to be transformative. So
yes.
really fantastic. Thank you. All right, so let me I'm gonna just do a quick check. I think we got a couple of minutes here. We've not talked about the opportunity youth, the disconnected group. And if there's some individuals that are working with opportunity youth that are involved in those programming, would love for you to raise your hand and love to hear a little bit about what you're doing. This is a really critical area where we're losing so many youth. And what happens is not only are they getting lost in that process, but they're not developing along a pathway. So their actual future opportunities are then brought down tremendously. And I see Carrie on there. Carrie, why don't you come off mute?
Um, well, I'm working with Foster Nation, which is
Okay.
a program. They're in LA, but they're actually moving towards New York as well, growing there. And so it's a program for career coaches to mentor youth aging out of foster care. So that can go up to 28 years of age. So that's I'm kind of having a career change. So this is
Yeah.
where I'm
So
my background
so
is
the
industrial.
career, yeah, but the career mentoring is really something that we're also looking at. I know Ava, as our CEO, has been really putting a pin on that and developing some programs. We need career mentors, right? We don't have a certification for that in between, not a professional counselor, but a professional role model, right? That's what we're looking for, people who can be inspiring. And that kind of mentoring role is such a critical piece. What are some of the key elements that you're helping adults really learn how to do so they can really serve these high risk and really high need populations?
So the program is a 6-month program. So this is their third cohort that I am a coach with. There are 16 different lesson plans, and there's only 3 parts that have to be followed, because of course it's going to be dependent on what it's called proteges, the coachees. And so it's dependent on what their basic needs are. There's home, and it goes from homeless to people who are out working or in school. So there's a big range. fortunately, I have a great mentor, our protege, she actually just finished her FAFSA yesterday. So she missed
That's
her
awesome.
session with me, but I'm very excited.
For a good reason, yeah.
Yeah, and she has two children. You know, she's only 24 and she has two children. And she actually fled from Guatemala when she was 15. So, but she's just amazing. But right now her priority is housing, because she's going to lose her housing eligibility because she just turned 24. So it's very dependent on what their current needs are. Obviously, if you don't have housing, you can't focus on the next step of going to school, or so there are lots of things, making sure that they have IDs. You know, it starts off with life skills. Are they registered to vote? You know, things like that. So it's a great program that's got a great curriculum, and then you can kind of, you know, there are three, like I said, three lessons. You have to do the financial make sure that you go through a budget. They have to have a budget by the end of the program. They have to have a resume and LinkedIn profiles and things like that, and you know, basic life skills. So
That's fantastic. I want to thank you for doing that spontaneously. That's fantastic. And I think it just shows that when we start talking about opportunity populations, we need to figure out where they are, right? Many of them, there are going to be some homeless challenges. There's so many insecurities. We've even heard some of our philanthropic groups are like, let's get a career mentor in places like Goodwill, in just places where we know people in high need are going to be, so we can kind of find some supports and resources to get them on a different pathway. So it's definitely something that is a whole community-wide effort that needs to happen. And I know that there are many states that are starting to put together kind of an opportunity youth plan, and cities that are putting together plans and strategic plans around that. So I think the career mentoring has been a missing piece in all this. So really excited that you came off to talk about that, because it's dear to our hearts as well. All right. So why don't we go back to the show, if you will. We'll get into the whole piece here. So we want to have we're going to do one more data point, which is now what happens when we're in our mid-30s. Is life good? Are we getting to those pathways to social mobility? And I think you know the answer before we even get there, but I want to just kind of highlight where we're at. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take a little right turn and have Christy and Robin, who are two of our former state leaders that have been involved with us for many years in this space. And we're going to talk about a map that we put together, so everyone in your states, you can see how you're doing individually around these data points. So I know we're looking at it in an aggregate way, but we really need states to really take some ownership and think about ways in which we can address this. So next slide. So we've got about, in this case, some challenges that getting to that $25 an hour, which is what we were describing as kind of the earnings we're searching for. Trying to get rid of some of the things in front of my screen there we go. So on average, we've got about 55% of our adults working full time in that 33 to 36 year age group. We took the 33 to 36 because we thought that's a point at which we want to be established, right? We want to be thinking that we're there. And then of those, 26% are making that full-time living wage, right? So we've still got some challenges. 50% of those that are working full-time are only earning $19 or less than $19 an hour, which is another significant issue. So we've got some challenges in this space around that we've got to be concerned about. There are some variations, right? Some states, the higher top 10 states, $8 more an hour, which is a significant amount. And interestingly, I think that's really important. And also have more working full time, and 17% more that are getting a living wage. So in those cases, we actually do have some highlights, I guess, if you will, where we're feeling like some states are getting it there, moving towards that, but we still have a lot of work to do. I mean, if you're in your mid-30s and you're still struggling, which is what this is kind of pointing towards, wow, that's a hard one. And how can we, again, going back to the pathways model that we were just discussing, how do we help provide a way for everyone to be moving towards that living wage. And I know you heard Annette also talk about the CHIPS Act, which is a brand new initiative from that's bipartisan, that's all about trying to bring the semiconductor manufacturing back to the US. And there's a lot of high paying jobs in that. And it's a huge amount of opportunities that you're looking at. So in some cases, it's finding some of those places, those new innovative areas where we're going to have a higher income rate, and needing to help support individuals in transitioning, reskilling in a way to move them over into some of those areas. So, so that becomes an important piece. But I think we're gonna pause there. I think that we may have lost our state leaders, so I'm going to call on a couple more. Julia, get ready. You're coming off mute soon. Julia Renfro, who's one of our current state leaders. Julie, go ahead and come off of mute so I can pin you. Let's see. Are you there, Julie?
I am.
There you are. Okay. So Julia, so glad to see you. What I want to do, are you able to come off on the camera too, or stay off
Yep,
mute,
one
or
sec.
stay off the camera? Okay.
Hello,
Hey, so you're up in Alaska.
I am.
Can I use the word rural, or is there another word we can use, since it's even seems the rural doesn't even seem to be a good definition of what's going on up in Alaska?
Our word rural is a little bit different than your word rural. That
Yeah.
is for sure. 25% of
Yeah.
our state is on the road system. And so that makes it quite challenging to get some of the opportunities. We've mentioned CTSOs. I've seen in the chat as well about CTSOs.
Mm-hmm.
Those are fabulous, and we're getting more participation in them. We've got some excellent people who are bringing those across the state. But it makes it very challenging for students to be able to travel back and forth for those opportunities. And it makes it a challenge for them to be able to get to those CTE courses in order to gain the skills necessary to participate in CTSOs. So what we have done, our CTE coordinators for years have been trying to figure out how do we work on this. And they created what we call a key. It's the Alaska Education Exchange. And so that's one of the ways that we're sharing information back and forth. But yes, when we started making this map, we had lots of cool documents to get put onto this map. And
yeah, it's been a labor, hasn't it? We've
it
been working
is.
on this for a few years. It started with just trying to chart. I'm gonna put this over here for a second. Just trying to chart the policies.
Yes.
And you
And when
should.
other
Yeah, here we go.
states, yeah, when other states started adding more information, and then we're like, oh, well, we've got some more pieces we need to find and put in here too.
That's right. That's right. So what's nice about it is, if you're wondering about what are the kinds of plans, well, let's go with Alaska because we got you right here. You know, what is
And
the
that's
name
not
of
where
the
Alaska
different?
is, but yes.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, but when we first did this, you were so big, you took over the whole map. So we had to find a place for you. We had to
Well,
move it around.
hello, we should.
Yeah. Yep. But we heard earlier, when we were talking about the whole idea of the MyCap that we call it here in Massachusetts, but it's a personalized career plan, and you call it personalized learning career plan. So basically, we wanted to point out where are the policies, what are the things, so everyone can begin seeing what's inside our different states, and so you get a chance to see what the Perkins plans might be, or the SCL frameworks and all. We're going to be redoing this because every year there's new resources and links keep falling down. But otherwise, you can kind of go through and see all your different states and what the policies are. And this was where we started in the initial phase one. And Julie, you were a big lead on that, as well as our other state leaders that are on the call.
Well, it's something I
This
wanted
year,
to bring up real quick, Scott, is,
sure.
we have a pretty high teacher turnover in the state of Alaska as well. So when we have something like this that we can show out and share, put in the toolbox for our incoming educators and counselors and that kind of thing, it is helpful for them to see, oh, where are all of the Alaska things? Because if we're importing them from another state, then they don't know, they're not homegrown here. They might not know what kinds
we're
of
doing.
things we already have going on. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. I also think it's important for our elected officials to know what we've got going on. I'm not sure they're always aware. So we're also
Exactly.
trying to help provide you as advocates, right? Whether you're a state leader, whether you're in an organization that's advocating, to basically be able to say, look, this is what we have. We might need to improve our policies, right? Some of our policies need some retooling. They need improvement. Maybe they need to be implemented effectively, right? The policy's there, but how come people aren't implementing them in the way that they need to be implemented? And so
Making them more
lots of,
systemic. Yeah.
yep, exactly. Expanding what works. So we created this. So the second part of what we've done is created a map that allows you to see where you rank on all that data we just showed you, right? Let me go. Well, we'll start with Alaska. We've got you right here. So when you click on Alaska, you're going to get a list of everything that's there in one nice little snapshot, right? Which is nice. But let me show you some more interactive dynamics. And I think, Chong, do you want to put the link into the chat so people can kind of start playing around with this a little bit?
Sure.
So under career readiness, which was that first one we have, you can start to see where the different states are in terms of the darker ones are the ones that are higher. So you can see, well, who are the ones that are big on post-secondary outcomes? What about for 4-year completion rates, right? You can start to see. So we're trying to give you a sense to try to move in and see, well, what are states doing? What do they look like? And then hopefully you're going to move over and say, well, what are their policies in this space, right? So you can flip over to the state policies for those states and see what they might have going on, So again, you can now look at the education opportunities. We can fit on which has the full-time individuals making the higher wage earnings. And then when we get to the social mobility, we can do a similar thing. We can look at the full-time adults making living wages, things like that. So it is it's a more in-depth way of looking at where you are within your own state. Again, I want to keep going to the point. None of us are doing where we need to be. We all need to be showing some improvements. We're seeing things like in, what was it? There are some states that historically haven't done well, but that are investing heavily on early education. Some of the programs that are making sure they're reading by the 3rd grade, and if not, then they're held until they are ready to be in that 4th grade. They're showing significant improvement gains in some of the other outcomes. So starting to see the investments they're making are paying off in really exciting ways that we're seeing on the data. So it doesn't mean that because a state is in a certain area, they don't have good things going on. It just means that we all have things that we need to be working on in this whole space. But I'm thinking, Julie, what do you think in terms of how you could use this kind of information, like when you have something like this? What are some options for hopefully, trying to support getting our legislation involved, or even getting our schools and our colleges to work together more effectively on some of these issues?
Right. We try real hard here to support each other. That get some monkey wrenches every once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
But being able to have this information, we are a local control state.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it's great when we can have some legislative information and policies go that direction for our state,
Mm-hmm.
but it's really going to be more of the schools and school boards, school districts that are going to be picking up these pieces of information. And so when we see things about AP testing, we've got a few school districts who are making requirements around AP tests.
Mm-hmm.
Every student should have a completed AP class. We've got other school districts here in the state who have decided that they are going to go into career academies model for all of the high
Mm-hmm.
schools. So they're looking at different ways that they can implement this. Of course, in Alaska, everything has to be scalable. And so that is another piece. And one of the pieces of information that we found a couple of years ago, of course, nationally, you're seeing this, it does come from ACTE, is that if a student has completed 2 successive CTE courses, they have a much higher percentage graduation rate, right?
Right.
And so that, when we're going through and we're pulling the statistics for each school district in order to show that. Now, our school districts are also a little bit different in that I could have 46 or more schools in a school district. in Alaska. We don't have as many school districts. They're broken up by region across this very large state. But we could have a lot, and
A
even
lot
if
of variance.
46, that's not even one of the big school districts. So we could have a school district with 2 schools in it. We could have a school district with, 60 or so schools in it. So,
Right.
and then also
So,
bring this in when we're looking at if there's different grants that can be available
mhm,
regionally, or even bringing a couple of regions, a couple of school districts
mhm,
together. We have some of that happening in the state as well. So we do try
right.
to share our information back and forth, especially if we don't have, a main careers teacher in a particular location. How are they going to get their hands on this information?
Right.
How are they
Right.
going to find the right person to help them out? And also helping them to know that they're not the only person rowing in the boat.
Right.
That
That's really where we're at, I think, is trying to figure out how to create more access
Mhm.
the kinds of information and not having to depend always at the school who may not have the resources to provide that. But we've got to
Right.
find a way to get that information out. So there's a lot going on in that space.
And with as much
As well.
coastline as we have, we tend to, say that, boats rise together, right? So,
Mhm,
so we
mhm,
need to be working together on this. And when we
yeah.
show my work that I do here in Alaska, I try to make across the board from all of K-12 into post-secondary and into workforce.
Mhm,
And so I don't have a specific niche, a group that I work with.
mhm,
It's pretty much everyone. And so I try to make sure that I'm, putting on the right hat to address who I'm working with and be able to share that information back and forth. So, and introducing partners,
mhm,
you
mhm.
know, if you've got a piece of information, share it. Don't hold on to that. Put it out there and share it with
That's
others.
right.
Um, so that we can
That's right.
increase. I mean, Alaska might not
Mhm,
be at the top of all of the game,
mhm.
but we're definitely working on it.
We're
Uh,
all working on it. We're all working on it. And
yep,
I
and it's a
also, this is,
very diverse population, right?
yeah, yeah.
Trying to make sure that we can help everyone.
And and this is the first time we've chatted since you became a grandmother. So want to just say congratulations on the new baby.
Thank you.
And it's great to see you back with us. So this is great. Um, so we've got some time now for some conversation. I know there's been a huge amount going on in the chat, which I'm really excited about. So I would love to, oh, good question from, I'll just start with Joni. Is it Johnny Farrow? Yeah, we did CTE in the first round for our first report. We have a whole dive on career and technical education. The data had not been updated when it was time to do this report. I will tell you that we are currently working on CTE right now, and we will have a disaggregated look at the career, those that have taken the two courses at least, how many are in that space for both the high school and the 2-year, and we'll have it disaggregated, and we'll also have it disaggregated by industry. So as you've heard us talk about, there are some really exciting innovations going on in advanced manufacturing. We're going to highlight that. We're going to see how are we doing as a nation. We're also going to have apprenticeships in there too. Same data, same kind of thing. Looking at it in a disaggregated way, and also seeing where are we in terms of the kinds of pieces, kinds of industries that are involved in that as well. So we will definitely have that around the turn. But if you want to see where we were at CTE, all of the things we heard about, that the CTE completers are the ones who are going to school at a higher rate. They're doing better in college when they get to that when they get to the college. So there's a lot of really positive things. There just wasn't a new data set for us to use in this particular round. So I appreciate the question. So Chong, are there some other questions that have come up, or Ava, there's some questions in there that we should be responding to, or anyone that we want to ask to come in and have a conversation?
Well, one really important comment in the chat, set of comments in the chat, had to do with populations that are commonly left out. So some of the subgroups. So for example, Dr. Parker put in the chat about how her college works with special populations, particularly around autism, young people with autism that can enter
Right.
manufacturing. Dr. Parker, would you like to share anything else about that?
No, Ava, I think I shared a lot in the chat, but You can look it up. It's a national organization started out of California called Uniquely Abled. And they have a very high success rate. And we are now have completed our third cohort. And we've got students, autistic students, some transferring to engineering, some continuing through associate degree, and some going to work. And it's just been huge that we have a special graduation for them. And we invited one of our local corporations that is having problems filling their workforce. And so now they're developing a whole new curriculum for print press operators.
That's great. That's great. All right. Some other pieces of comment. I see lots of great comments going on. This is fantastic.
Yeah, another really important conversation. I'd just like to raise Dr. Letitia Robertson, if she's still on with us. She announced in the chat something I'm really excited about, we all are really excited about, and that's the National Career Clusters Advisory Board was hosting a webinar on June 6th to walk through the new National Career Clusters framework. She put the registration in the chat. This is really important because part of, for two reasons. One reason, you know, as Scott, you mentioned, we don't have enough data about career technical education, even though that's critically important, and you know, on a national scale, even though it's critically important about our nation's career readiness. And we've known for a long time that we need to change our data collection system and also update how we understand careers in this modern time. And that's why I'm really excited about the work that Advanced CTE is doing to modernize the career clusters framework. I wonder if Dr. Letitia would care to come off mute and speak on this.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for that, Ms. Mitchell. So yes, I serve on the advisory committee, and the last 7 to 8 months, we have had in-depth discussions about modernizing the career clusters framework. So we actually did a deep dive into going through each of the career clusters, developing initial pathways, reviewing, you know, through the Bureau of Labor Statistics, what those current trends are, you know, ensuring that those pathways lead to the living wage and not just the sustainable wage or, you know, just the minimum wage for individuals to actually develop a career and a pathway for sustainable and living wages. Another thing that we really focused on was ensuring that the proper career fields were aligned with the career clusters, because we identified, for example, under public policy, if you have an administrative assistant, is it an administrative assistant or is it an executive assistant? So we had to really go through and dig deep into the job descriptions, you know, really look at how the different job postings and websites are classifying and coding careers these days, and what that looks like for the youth and adult learners that are actually transitioning into the workforce. Because as we had mentioned during this call, that framework and the outlook for these individuals is completely different from when we had began our careers 20, 30 years ago. So we wanted to make sure that the framework was meeting the needs of today's learner and not the learner from 20 to 30 years ago. So we greatly appreciate if you all could join the discussion on June 6th and complete the survey that will accompany the training, because your feedback will be greatly supported and appreciated, and it will continue to support the ongoing development of modernizing the career framework cluster to ensure that we are meeting the needs of all learners. So thank you all so much for the opportunity to participate today.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Robertson. That is fantastic. I also see a question from Marthea Pitts. Is the adult earnings percentage for the college graduates only based on the other? So was it for all adults or college grads? It was for all adults. It was not college grads. It was for everyone. So thank you for that clarification, which is great. Are there some other questions or clarifications that have come in that we need to do? I see so many great comments. I can't wait to copy this down. Is there any other ones that have come up that you saw? Looks like we're good. All right. All right. Well, I think we're in pretty good shape there. So is there anyone who would like to just chat a little bit about how maybe is there an innovation in this space? You know, we've talked about disability is a really important theme that we've been doing a lot of work in as well, working with our Office of Disability Employment Policy, with the Department of Labor, and some other advocacy groups to just make sure that that's a front and center place. English learners, another huge issue around how are we supporting college and career readiness for English learners as we go through. And you just heard a little bit about foster care and, you know, all the challenges that go with that for English learners. Any other pieces, any other things that people might want to talk about for today? You want to raise your hand or? All right.
So there's something that has been commented on in the chat that I think is really important, but I know some folks are being a little shy here. There's been some conversation around how employers are, at least some employers are shifting to competency-based hiring.
Yeah, skills, yeah.
Yeah, and for me, I was linking that in with the work that was done on the National Career Clusters framework because they spoke to industry about the particular skills as they were building the framework.
Yeah,
And I was
yeah.
wondering, Scott, how you saw this shift to focusing on skills, to moving the needle on some of the data that you presented that wasn't so great about the outlook for
Yeah,
young
well, you know,
adults.
you're just pressing my button on that one, right? So, yes, so I am a huge fan of skills for the simple reason that they're malleable, right? When we try to look at interest or personality, which we always try to do with our career kind of evaluations, we're not really focusing on things that are always changeable. We can develop durable skills, right? We used to call them soft skills. We can develop those durable skills. We can develop those technical skills. And there's many different pathways into some of the jobs that involve those. So I'm really excited about that. I'm also excited about industry taking a look at whether what they need is a degree or do they need the skills for which the degree should represent. And we need to make sure we hold our higher ed accountable that if you're putting someone out with a degree, are they aligned to the key skills that we need, right? That is definitely a very key piece that we need to be doing. And I know we've got Lightcast, which is helping us do that. I know with this whole chips type thing, that's a big issue, right? How do we help industry help us understand the skills that are needed? And how do we help support industry in loosening up a little bit around what they're thinking that they might be needed, right? What if the data comes back that some of the skills might be different than they thought they were? Can we help support that? And can we help higher education as well as apprenticeship programs and CDE programs ensure that they're developing those skills that are actually needed? So I'm a huge fan of the skills part of it. I think that that's a way that we can capture more youth of color into this space because we're not talking about their grades. We're not talking about, we got to get them role models. But we also got to show them you've got talent. Let's help get that talent. Let's help you see how that talent aligns with these opportunities. The other thing I like about skills is we focus on transferability as the key. For me, that's the new key term. That's the currency. Are you developing a resume that allows you to transfer into multiple opportunities so that when you're in that rural place, for example, and something shuts down, can you move into something else? Are you aware of the different opportunities you might have? And I think that's a really important area that we need to be focusing on. And that actually starts in middle school. I forgot to bring that up with Eugene, but kids get really excited about building a resume in middle school. And all that teaches them is that, yeah, it's about what you're developing, right? Let's figure out what you're developing. And they want to put it down and they want to look for other things they can develop. And so when we start using the skills and durable skills as a key part of that currency, I think it's really exciting for the youth as well. So, so thank you. I think that's a big issue. I know we're still a lot going on in that space right now. And I know that our Office of Career and Technical and Adult Education is looking into this as well to kind of think through the skills component to it. But I'm really leaning all into that. I think it's fantastic. Ava, you have a question that came up from Casey Gargano about this whole career readiness award that you started off with. We kind of dropped it and then went off to other things. So maybe you could talk a little bit more about the Leo Ready award and maybe a little bit about who this Leo Ready person is anyway. Who is this guy?
So thank
He's
you.
smiling. I think we got him. Yeah, I can see him smiling.
Thank you so much, Scott, for prefacing that. So the announcement is forthcoming. Leo, would you like to come off mute and talk a little bit about it, or would you like me to do that? You're on mute
Well,
still.
there we are.
It really, I don't mind the idea at all, but it really wasn't my idea. So why don't you talk a little
Well,
bit
it's
more
got your
about
name on it. It's got your name on it, and for good reason. Ava, why don't you talk a little bit
I'll
about
talk
his
about
history and just why we are so
Yes.
excited that our founder is leading this charge.
Yeah, so I would be remiss not to start off by saying that the Coalition for Career Development Center is an industry-led organization focused on career readiness for all. And our board members, like our founder, Leo Reddy, Jean Eddy, who was one of our guests, our chair, Dr. Parker, who works alongside corporations, and Penny Mary Enroth, who is also on this call, have been holding up the responsibility of industry to work with education to solve this career readiness challenge. And in alignment with that, Leo Reddy, our founder and chair emeritus, established an award to the institution that best represented the 5 pillars that our coalition of industry leaders and partners believe are the most important for us to focus on to make career readiness for all reality. Career planning, career advising, work-based and applied learning, career technology, and accountability. So we are going to be working with our partners like Advanced CTE was mentioned on this call and others to select the school that represents those 5 pillars based on criteria and nominations. And we have a broadcast video to show you to announce that award. So if I feel like if I say anything else about it, I'll be ruining the announcement. Leo, was there anything else I should have added but did not?
No, I think that's fine, David. Thank you very much. I think we all care very deeply about the future of our young people, and but the data is discouraging in many areas. Mental health problems seem to be increasing. Obesity problems seem to be increasing. A lot of negative outcomes we're looking at, but I think what we're trying to do is really create a totally different mindset of our young people in the system that'll enable people to be simply a lot happier, mentally happier, be happier because they'll be working on defining their own career pathway when they graduate. As soon as they graduate, they should be going right to work in the pathway they choose, and it should be contributing to their peace of mind and their personal happiness more than the current situation. I always like to quote Thomas Jefferson myself. I remember the French had liberty, equality, and fraternity, and we had freedom and so forth. But he added the pursuit of happiness. There's nothing wrong with being happy. So I really think that we should do more in measuring happiness in the city. I think with this program, we'll have a more happy young people, which is what we all want.
Thank you, Leo. That is awesome. So I also, as we're getting ready to close, I had a couple things I want to do. One, I want you to all go out and buy Jean Eddy's book. Jean Eddy just won an award for her leadership in this field from ASU plus GSV, which is one of the most innovative and forward-thinking conferences we have in this country. I also want to thank her again, and ASA and Julie Lamers, her right arm at the organization, for their tremendous just being behind us on this report and really believing in it and supporting us all through this, which has been fantastic. And always look forward to the deep conversations. Annette Parker, I'm so excited that everyone got to meet Annette Parker, our CEO, board, our board chair, but also president of this fantastic college in South Central College in Minnesota. And you can see, I mean, how they must feel having someone with the leadership and just your background Dr. Parker is just incredible. And it's just been great to be able to join with you on some of these adventures that we're going through. Ava Mitchell, our CEO, of course, who's been kind of stewarding our whole Coalition for Career Development Center. Thank you for all of that. And Leo for being a founder and really jump-started this whole area. So yes, I just wanted to give lots of thanks. And my staff that are here, Chong Park and Nkechi, have been huge in this. And we also have Allison from Concept Communications, who was responsible for putting that report together. We had our Boston University SAIL program did our map, which was fantastic, but also our state leaders who gave us the content for all of that map. And we're going to continue coming back to you all this Thursday when we get to our next Thursday, whenever our next meeting, I think it's this Thursday, we'll be hitting you back up to say we need to update our policies to make sure every state is represented well on that. So just want to say thank you. I see Katya is on here too from Concept Communications. She's been the heart of that group and really leading and helping us think through how to get this information to you. So, and Artem, you have been our hero. We talk about you all the time. He's with our colleagues out at working on this work for the longest period of time, and has been mentoring us in this area as well. So we really thank you, Artem, for hope you see your fingerprints on the work we've been doing in this space. So any rate, everybody, thank you so much. And we'll be having more. We'll be getting back soon with some federal policy analyses where we can talk about where the money is and how we can leverage it for career development. And so hope to have you all back for that. So any rate, thank you all, and take care. And all right, that's a
Thanks
wrap.
to you, Scott. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate your leadership. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.